Welcome to All Souls Unitarian-Universalist Church. I'm Dan Tinen, a member of this congregation. I do not speak for the congregation, and I'm not ordained, so I don't speak for the Unitarian-Universalist Association. In case you find something objectionable in what I say today, it's my opinion. In this congregation, we believe it's up to each of us to reach out to make sure that everyone feels welcome. So please look around in the four directions and welcome or greet those who are with us this morning. Matt, how many people are online for us so far? We got 4 folks online. Hello to you too, the virtual attendees. Welcome. We have a special guest here today. Jim Scott is an amazing composer and singer-songwriter who I first met when he was a guitarist for the Paul Winter Consort, contributing to the work that most people know, the Missagaya, performed at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City. And he is also, several of his songs have been included in our hymnals, both singing the living tradition, the one that's been around since, the 80s, late 80s, and this morning, the worship committee would like you to know that we've got the Teal hymnal. He has a couple more in there, and most people have heard Gather the Spirit, which is one of the most popular Unitarian Universalist hymns. So we're very happy to have him here.
And he's still alive.
He's still alive. And It just came back from a tour of 2 weeks in California, playing several churches there and in Phoenix, Arizona. So he is not only a little bit jet-lagged, he is also dealing with the sudden temperature change. So bear with us this morning. Anyway,
we'll make it.
I invite everyone here and online to breathe. Come into this room. Be present, be focused, be at peace. In the words of Reverend Kathleen McTeague, we come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into each other's faces and seek communion. This house of laughter, memory, and hope is hallowed by our presence together. And instead of listening to the prelude, I would ask you to open your new teal, aquamarine, hymnals, Singing the Journey, and turn to hymn number 1054, Let This Be a House of Peace. Okay, Jim, you want to guide us through this a little bit?
I would love to. This song's based on a poem that you'll find some similar looking words, it's good, by Kenneth Patton in the back of our gray hymn book. And I turned it into rhyming, scanning poetry and made this song. Let this be a house of peace, of nature and humanity, of sorrow and elation. Let this be our house, a haven for the healing, an open room for question and our inspiration. Sing this little interim thing. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Here's second verse. Let this be a house of freedom, guardian of dignity and worth held deep beside us. Let this be our house, a platform for the free voice, where all our sacred differences here shall not divide us. Let this be a house of peace. Now, as some people sing that part, we can put it, if you want to sing a slightly higher part, it goes, let this be a house. You can sing, let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house. Third verse. Let this be a house of peace. Speak truth while my conscientists and mystics abide in reverence here. Let this be our house, of our creation, where words of all and melodies consecrate the atmosphere. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of, let this be a house of peace. Fourth verse, let this be a house of prophecy. May visions for our children be our common themes. Let this be our house of myth and lore and legend, of thoughts of story and of let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house. Let this be a house of peace. 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 Of peace.
Our topic this morning is the topic of war and peace. It's appropriate that this is the day after Veterans Day, Armistice Day, where a ceasefire was called in November 1918 of the war that would end all wars. Now, the world has become, since the 20th century, a more peaceful place, and I take it as a hopeful sign that we are so disturbed by these conflicts between peoples. Will you join with me in the chalice lighting? We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, symbol of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. In this house, we covenant with one another to create a community built on a foundation of love, to work together to promote equality, justice, and peace, accepting responsibility for our individual acts, to stand on the side of love, embracing the liberation of oppressed, and working to end discrimination and unjust privilege, to communicate with kindness and support, and to serve with compassion and commitment, to listen respectfully and value our diversity as a source of our collective strength, to learn and grow together, generously sharing our time, talents, and treasures, to celebrate the joys of discovery from the wonder of youth to the wisdom of age, to openly share our laughter and our tears, showing reverence for the divine in all that is. Every week in our church, we take up an offering that gives us an opportunity to exercise the generosity of spirit that supports All Souls and its many ministries. I'd like to pause a moment to say that I heard that that Stone Soup served 560 meals yesterday. We see this act of giving, of growing more generous in our hearts and in our actions, as essential to our spiritual well-being. We will now receive this morning's offering.
Soaring beyond doubt over Earth's solemn gravity, in noisy migration, still they long for their rest. Sun-kissed their wings as they carve the sky eternal, looking for the night when they'll sleep in their nests. Voyagers heed signs written on the wide horizon. From their third dimension, find the secrets they seek. Quest for nobility, sustenance, serenity, beckons to the brave as it comforts the meek. So may we see over barriers and borderlines a bond of all beings of the earth, land, and sea. Dreaming the world where each life is truly valued, rendering a justice that restores humanity. Spirit of the earth, spirit of the never-ending, from the third dimension, seeing straight to the heart. Spirit moving always just beyond our understanding, in the greater dance, may we each play our part. Spirit of the earth, spirit of the never-ending, from the third dimension, seeing straight to the heart. Spirit moving always just beyond our understanding, in the greater dance, may we each play our part.
Individually and together, we are building a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. Each one of you, by your commitment of time, talent, and treasure, helps make this grand vision real. Five weeks ago yesterday, a group of radical extremists, with the ethics of school shooters and the blind rage and faith of kamikaze pilots, burst through the border fence between the Gaza Strip and Israel and murdered about 1,400 Israelis, including Arab Bedouins, not just Jews, and kidnapped about 240 others. And the response from Israel has been overwhelming, brutal, and predictable, which was part of the goal of the jihadists. Any way you cut it, it's a heartbreaking situation with a peace shattered, innocents killed, wounded, and worse, dwellings, public buildings, hospitals, the modern infrastructure of life all turned to rubble. People are feeling anger and bitterness and despair and rage, but most of all, fear. Will this get worse? Will we get dragged into this conflict? How can such long-term enmity between peoples be overcome? Well, I felt those same feelings, and you surely did too, when Russia invaded Ukraine over a year ago. In both cases, we see ancient hatreds between people manifest in unnecessary violence that makes divisions worse, not better. And in both cases, we see the warring parties try to convince the world of the righteousness of their side and enlist our power in their behalf. This news makes us wonder if humanity will always be plagued by violence. And we know that war makes things worse for both sides, but what can we do? As Tom Hartman says, despair is not an option. And if you're looking for simple answers to these complex situations, I have none to offer. But I can offer a few deep principles that I think will point us in the right direction. The universalism that we're named for is the theological concept that there is no such thing as an eternal hell, that eventually every soul winds up in heaven. The name of this church is, after all Souls. Our universalist ancestors were derided as heretics, but in the modern era, this universalist idea has been adopted by most mainstream Christian denominations, more or less. But the other kind of universalism is certainly consistent with and might be a consequence of theological universalism. But if you hear the word universalist on television or radio from a secular commentator about the conflicts in the world, they're talking about the larger concept of a universal oneness that rises above human divisions of racial, ethnic, or national identity. Now, the opposite of this other kind of universalism, if you'll allow me to use this word in this particular context, is tribalism. Ukrainians versus Russians, Israelis against Palestinians, Catholics versus Protestants, Sunnis versus Shiites, Hutus versus Tutus, Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives, good and evil, white and black. The American poet John Chardy, who had been a crew member on B-29s during World War II, wrote a poem about this phenomenon. He called it My Tribe. He wrote, "Everyone in my tribe hates everyone in your tribe. Every girl in my tribe wants to be there when we bring in anyone from your tribe. Our girls save bundles of kindling in their hope chests for you. Every boy in my tribe has a peg from which to hang the scalp of anyone in your tribe. Our boys hone knives in their dreams of you. Everyone in my tribe is proud of our boys and their dreams, of our girls and their trousseaux. Our lives have dear goals, across which we shall finally kick all of your heads. We are united." Yikes. Well, we see that attitude in these conflicts. And this attitude justifying any and all kinds of violence by one group against another is what happens when people trap themselves into a narrow identity of ideology and hate that snuffs out all empathy, charity, and understanding of other groups. Now, this attitude can flourish under the flag of nationalism, or it can be clothed in the robes of religion, but not a religion whose first principle is to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And by that meaning, every person, all people, regardless of what they believe, their race, social status, wealth, or nationality. The great UU minister for his church said once that our faith has two fundamental ideas. First, that we all come from the same source. Second, that we all share the same destiny. Religion that divides people between the saved and the unsaved the goyim and the chosen, the commies and the capitalists, the elect and the infidels. To us, that's not real religion. It's a dysfunctional, if satisfying, perversion of religion. We do need to recognize, however, it's part of our evolutionary history to distrust those strangers on the other side of the hill. I'd like to point out, though, that if religion wasn't there to reinforce this distrust, something else would likely take its place. One commentator put it, well, atheists may feel that Judeo-Christianity is full of superstitious nonsense, but wait till you see what takes its place. I do see a glimmer of hope in this whole mess. In our modern interconnected world, when a video can show you what's happening in real time, shot on a phone, can cross all international borders in a few milliseconds, this violence in Ukraine and the Middle East is acting to increase the awareness of onlookers all over the world that violence is a terrible answer for resolving human conflict. War isn't only destructive, it just doesn't work most of the time. Putin's invasion didn't reduce Ukrainian nationalism, it increased it tenfold. And Hamas's rampage unified a previously divided Israel against their cause. Now, it was clear to any thinking person that Hamas expected Israel to respond with overwhelming, terrible force so Hamas could get international attention and sympathy. Their spokesmen have said this. It's also clear to any tactician outside this mess that it's a big mistake for Israel to take the bait and throw its overwhelming military force into an area the size of Manhattan where half the population is under the age of 15. Using more force just makes more militancy on both sides. You wind up with a stalemate that simmers through the centuries. Now, universalism is the antidote for this poison. But reprogramming the brains of millions of people is a challenging task that will take a lot of time and effort by people of goodwill. I'd like to count us among that. Now, besides using this other kind of universalism, another useful tool might be the legal concept of the statute of limitations. Let's step away from international affairs for a moment and look at something a little closer to home. You probably know a married couple who have gone through a bitter divorce, and long after the divorce is supposedly settled, they go back and forth for years about who cheated, who was unfair, who did this, who did that. And this can go on for years or a lifetime after the divorce papers have been filed. The husband says, "My wife drove me away." The wife says, "He was cruel." He claims that she took his money. She says that he didn't take care of the kids. It goes on and on. Neither person ever really gets on with their life. They expend psychic energy on the hurts of the past. Instead of spending their now divided assets to build better lives for themselves, they waste money on lawyers and court battles over minor details. They don't move on. The injustice of what happened 5, 10, 20 years ago keeps them entangled in an unproductive, dysfunctional conflict. The statute of limitations is an antidote to this kind of endless back and forth argument. And you might know this, if you seek a legal remedy about some crime, you have to file your charges before too many years have elapsed. The courts don't want to deal with witnesses who have died and their memories get foggy, the evidence has deteriorated. They don't want to make a judgment about that stuff. Now, there needs to be a statute of limitations in our personal lives for our emotional health. And I'm saying that in international politics, for peace to ever have a chance. Friends, history is full of conquest and injustice. If we try to go back through the centuries and correct every past wrong, there will be such a tangle of claims and counterclaims that no progress will ever be made. This is true in psychotherapy. You try to get your patients out of the rut of blaming things in their past for what's wrong with their lives. Now, it is true, taking a careful patient history is essential to therapy, but it's only a stop towards building a better future that's uncoupled from the past. The psychologist John Bradshaw said that exploring your history for the roots of your problems isn't about placing blame. The blame game isn't productive, but coming to understanding so you can move past the effects of your history. Now, I think it would be a good idea to apply those ideas from law and psychology to the present-day situation in Ukraine and Israel, because we're all familiar with the debates going on. Putin's justification for his war is that Ukraine has always been a part of Russia, but Ukraine has been recognized as some kind of independent entity for over a century. And this is where an example of where I think the statute of limitations needs to apply. If something happened before any living being had it in their direct experience, it's probably only of marginal application to the current situation. I mean, 200 or 300 years ago, what's now Ukraine was part of Poland and Lithuania. Would that justify Warsaw taking over Kyiv? And before Putin's invasion, relations between ethnic Ukrainians were somewhat on the level of tensions between French and English-speaking Canadians. And Russian aggression has made those tensions skyrocket to a level that will last for generations. Looking at Israel and Palestine, the right wing of Israel has gained more power in their opposition to a Palestinian state, partially because of many proposals that failed trading land for peace. And the fundamentalist wing of the Palestinians is opposed to any Jewish state at all, while ultra-Orthodox Israelis believe that the Torah gives Israel the title to all land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean. Modern people believe it's pointless to adjudicate real estate claims that were laid out in the Bronze Age. The more appropriate history starts in someone's lifetime in 1948, when the United Nations proposed the first original two-state solution for Israel and Palestine, which at the time the surrounding Arab countries responded to by making war on the then tiny Jewish state, which nullified the UN plan completely. And what I appreciate the most about that original plan was that under the UN mandate, Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, wouldn't belong to any country, not to Israel, not to Palestine, not to Jordan. It would be run by the United Nations as a World Heritage Site. After all, Jerusalem is a historical holy place for three major religions that are followed by billions of people who don't live in the Middle East. And it makes sense that this area should be governed by the whole world, just as the capital of the United States isn't in Virginia or Maryland, it's in the District of Columbia. Well, today's Israel is a fact. It's not going away. And it's also a fact that the majority of Ukrainians would rather have closer ties to the West, to the European Union, than to Russia. Artillery shells are not going to change their minds. Similarly, bombs and rockets aren't going to change the bitterness of Palestinians who feel denied the dignity and self-determination that the world promised them long ago. On the internet, you can find hundreds of podcasts and videos and articles about these conflicts, and many of them amount to the kind of back and forth I described between the divorced couple. Those historical facts are worthwhile to learn about, but they're not reasonably a basis to adjudicate the borders in Ukraine and the Middle East. The second someone starts talking to you about the Balfour Declaration of 1917, your conversation is probably heading off the rails. You could easily go back 3,000, 4,000 years, you'll get one claim. Go back 1,400 years, you'll get another. And you could go back 300 years, and Turkey would have a claim to that land under the Ottoman Empire that was there for 300 years. During World War I, the British promised the Arabs independence, so they'd help fight against the Turks, Lawrence of Arabia. They also supported a Jewish homeland in the belief that American Jews would support the U.S. entry into the war and that Russian Bolsheviks would keep Russia in that war as well. And they were wrong on both counts. What's my take home for you? What am I going to do? Well, my advice to all of us is, let's not get dragged into this pointless back and forth about who's right, who's to blame. There's a ton of information out there, some of it skewed, some of it misinformation. And we need to choose carefully reasonable and well-informed sources who've thought deeply about this. And here I'm thinking about Tom Friedman and Nicholas Kristof, especially, of the New York Times. That both of them have spent decades traveling in that region and reporting on it. On the Ukrainian issue, I recommend the Yale professor Timothy Snyder, who made it his life's work to study Middle European history and speaks both Russian and Ukrainian. It's important, I think, on social media to avoid repeating messages that ultimately might come from a terrorist organization or theocratic extremists of one kind and another. We are universalists. We have to stand for universal values, for the ultimate oneness of humanity that gets forgotten in this back and forth between sides. Our ultimate worldwide vision is a one-state solution. Any state where the judiciary isn't in the pocket of one group or another, where people can expect a fair shake and legal protection, regardless of who their ancestors were. And instead of bracing yourself for the next rocket that falls, the next home that's destroyed, the next loved one who has gone to an early grave, you live in a land of peace and freedom and mutual respect where all people can be productive, creative, and fulfilled. America doesn't live up to that dream all the time, but that dream is what brought many of our ancestors here to this country. And this, yes, this is a stolen land, but there's no going back. There is a statute of limitations. We are where we are right now in the present moment, and so is everybody else on this planet. All of these past conflicts and histories are, in the end, just stories that we've been told. The only thing we can be sure of are the things that we ourselves have experienced in our lives. Stories are important, but none of them are infallible. Yes, there are passages in the holy books that justify the kind of violence that we see in the world today. But there are also passages in those holy books that support the kind of universalist values that get us beyond conflict. Let's not let ourselves become a divorce lawyer advocating for one side or the other. Let's think of ourselves from our distant position and our religion's position as a syncretic one that draws from multiple sources worldwide. Let's think of ourselves as a marriage counselor leading people beyond old conflicts. May it be so. Now, our next hymn is one of Jim's hymn in this book, but the odd thing about this is it only includes the chorus. It doesn't include all the words that Jim wrote when he was taking a march for peace. Why don't you talk about the March for Peace?
Yeah, the Great Peace March in 1986. If you've never heard of it, we can thank the liberal media as soon as we find them. And there were 650 people walked across the United States over 9 months from Los Angeles to New York and took a right to Washington, D.C. And I did not go on the whole thing, but I played a number of times along the way. And I have to say, it changed my life. Here are these people dedicating a year of their lives. The march took 9 months, but if you figure, a lot, it was more than a year of commitment to say, I want to try to change the world. It was originally called the Great Peace March for Nuclear Disarmament, but it grew to be just peace. And, the major media never really reported on it. Wouldn't it be a good story? We could be hearing about this. But it didn't. That's before internet and access to such stuff. The major networks owned by big corporations just weren't interested. This will be enhanced if I do that. Well, walking down the street the week before the end of this march, I made up this little mantra, this little song, and kept adding verses to it. But we sang it walking down the street in Baltimore before arriving in Washington, D.C. the next week. And I got to sing it with Pete Seeger watching the proceedings. And I hope humming along in Washington at the end. And it's kind of gone all over the place now. Here's the way it goes. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. So the words are easy. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. So put the four me's on the first and fourth phrases and we have it. Let's try it again. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Well, I'm full of such mixed emotions right now. I got to say it to someone. We've got to do this more than just holidays. Got to be in it for the long run. For the long run. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. How can weapons of war be weapons of peace? We are fighting in a different fashion. We too believe in peace through strength, but our strength is in our compassion. In our compassion. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Well, this turns out to be a 4-part round. But so we can do it in at least 2 parts. I'll bet somebody can come in with that second part. Let's try it. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough.
Before we go into joys and concerns, I'd like to share with you a prayer that was written by the chaplain of the House of Representatives, Margaret Groon Kibben. And even though she uses the language of reverence that some of us might be uncomfortable with, the message behind her words is worth repeating here, and it gives me hope that people of other faith communities feel the way we do. Loving God in this momentous time, when the events of the last week have disrupted so much, when unforeseen changes have caused upheaval in so many lives, and when the words and actions of both friends and foes have caused hurt and weakened bonds of trust, we confess our natural inclination to dig in and lash out against the turmoil and the people around us. We are reluctant to pray for what seems impossible, but we pray that you would cause our cynicism to be surrendered to courage. Let our despair be turned to hope. Let hate be substituted by love. Be merciful to us as we dare to make this profound change in our own attitudes. This love you ask us to share goes against our grain. We can only pray that you will abide in us and perfect your love in us, a love that is patient and kind, a love that doesn't envy, doesn't boast, and is not proud. May our love not dishonor others, not be self-seeking or easily angered. May we keep no record of wrongs. May our love not delight in evil, but rejoice with the truth. May our love always protect, always trust, always hope, and always persevere. At this critical inflection point, may love be our aim. In your name we pray, amen. Let's sit in silence for just a moment. Amen. Now is the time in our service for sharing joys and sorrows. If you have a sorrow that needs the help of this community to carry, or a joy so great that it will lift us all up by hearing it, now is the time. Will you be the microphone bearer or okay. A microphone will be brought to you. If you're sharing with the congregation, please note this isn't a time for personal or political announcements. We can have time to talk about that afterwards. We care for each other by being true to the purpose of this time and by our brevity, so please be brief. A great joy we have today is to have visitors to All Souls, and so we invite you, if you're new here, to introduce yourself. Now is the time for welcoming visitors and sharing joys and sorrows.
My name is Owen, and I have a joy to share with you today, and it is this. I love this church. I love the hearts of the people in it. And today, specifically, I've never heard of Jim Scott before, or maybe I heard the name somewhere, Jim, but wow, I'm just so glad you exist, and I feel great joy about that.
Hi, I'm Tina, and I have a joy and a concern. One of the residents where I work has come back from rehab. She's 102 years old, and I'm sure she's really upset with having to have somebody stay with her full time, and having had one of her rooms in her apartment cleaned out and room made for accessibility, and she doesn't like people controlling her things, and I get that. And but I'm so glad that we have her back. And I had some devastating news the other day that we have a resident who has a caregiver who would see him in the halls with her and talking, and he's just such a sweet man. And I found out, and he's my age, that he passed away with a major stroke, and I was just devastated. And I know that Mimi, our resident, is not doing well because of that, because he was a dear soul. So I need a candle lit for that.
Anybody on Zoom?
Christine shares that she would like you to please light a candle for peace. She shares, I connected to the Great Peace March at a few points, first in Princeton, and then I spent a few days in DC, sleeping in a VW bus, making plans to work against nuclear proliferation. Returning home to do just that. It was a moment in a continuum of work for peace. I am heartbroken we are here.
Thanks, Chris. Jean?
Hi, I'm Sandra. And I have a very interesting, to me anyway, story. I had received news a couple of nights ago that my 16-year-old grandson was suffering from daily headaches, and they didn't know why. And I took in the information and didn't do anything in particular in the moment. But the next day, I got a letter in the mail that was addressed to a dear one at 15 Abbott Street, Greenfield, Mass. And I opened it up, and it included a prayer rug and instructions to pray and how to use the prayer rug. For instance, it had on it a face of Jesus with a crown of thorns and his eyes closed, but if you stared at the picture, eyes appeared open. And it also had a letter of instruction, like, lay this across your knees or get down and kneel on it and pray specifically for something. And then you must fold the prayer rug back up and put it in the return address envelope so that it can be sent on to someone else. And if you follow through on that, then there's a prophecy for you that's in a sealed envelope that you only open if you follow through and pray and return the prayer rug. And I'm like, I wouldn't usually take something like this seriously, but because I had just received the news about Finian, I thought, okay, this is a message from afar. There's no reason not to just step into alignment with the energy of this invitation and spread the prayer rug out and make my prayer. They even wanted me to enter in what I was praying for and what I was going to return. And I did it. And as I sealed up the returned envelope and walked towards the mailbox, I noticed the return address corner of the envelope said, in capital letters, "A big moment." And I thought, yeah, this is a big moment. I'm following some instructions from somebody who wants to call me a dear one. And I'm passing it on to whoever the next recipient is. And it just was such a blessing to say yes and surrender to this invitation from afar, just at the moment when I most needed direction about what to do about my grandson. So I'd like to light a candle for my grandson, Finian. And I'd also like to light a candle for the big heart that was behind this reaching out to strangers through the mail and blessing me in this way. And I'm just wanting to share that with everybody this morning.
There's one more to share.
Okay. There's one more?
Yes, there's one more. Carolyn Saltman would like to share. Hello, friends. Please light a candle of joy in gratitude for Dan and his sermon today, and also for his continuing presence in this UU community. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Carlin. Let's light one more candle to signify all those joys and concerns that we carry with us unspoken. Spirit of community in which we share and find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts towards one another, seeking to hold in our hearts all our joys and sorrows, both spoken and unspoken. Let us open our minds and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain, and the soft, gentle coming of love. And Jim, you have a little thing you do for joys and concerns.
A little philosophizing about the telling of stories, the sharing of stories. With every story told, our friendship becomes art. Each passage of life is a gateway to the heart. We are one in joy and sorrow, and the music of our learning is danced in love and harmony with each day of earth's turning. So that's a lot of words, and it goes down low and it goes up high. But don't let that faze you. Let's try it together. With every story told. With every story told, our friendship becomes art. Our friendship becomes art. Each passage of life, each passage of life is a gateway to the heart, is a gateway to the heart. We are one in joy and sorrow. We are one in joy and sorrow, and the music of our learning, and the music of our learning is danced in love and harmony, is danced in love and harmony with each day of earth's turning.
Our closing benediction comes from the words of one of the hymns in our hymn book. No matter what their weakness or their strength, there isn't one alive that we count outside. We wish deeper joy for all. Let none among us cultivate a hatred, all or part. May never one of us live by our rage or wish another injury. May we nurture our mindfulness a boundless heart beyond all fear and strife. Go in peace, be peace, make peace.
Go your way in peace. Wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take. May love guide you on your way. Comfort find in truth. May your struggles cease. May the fire within your heart light the way of peace. Bright and brave the dreams, born in darkest night. Mindful make our every step, honor all within our sight. Minds and hearts now one, till we meet again. Hold the vision of our peace, sacred until then.
And now it's time for coffee hour and after announcements, right? Okay.
Anybody have an announcement?
Hi, I'm Ellen, and I am co-chair of the Social Justice Committee, and we will be holding our meeting in the minister's office behind that door over there around 12:30 or whenever we're done with coffee hour.
And we're going to try to do a Zoom. We will continue the Zoom that people are on already and bring it into the office. So if that works, that'd be great for those at home.
Hi, my name's Russ. On the back of the order of worship for next week's service, said the person who's leading it, his name is John Porcini. His name is actually John Porcino, and some of you might know him, multi-instrumentalist and great storyteller. And also, if you're here for the first time today, we have a guest book in the entryway that stands on your left on the way out, and we'd love it if you'd put your name in there. If you'd like to know more about us, leave your contact information. But just your name is enough, because we love seeing that we've had guests here. Thanks.
So I'm on one of those buy nothing sites, and I scored a bunch of garlic yesterday, garlic cloves for either eating or planting, which it's not too late to do. and there's way too much for just me. So if anybody would like some garlic to bring home, please let me know.
You have it here?
I have it in the car.
Also, today at 3 o'clock here, right here is going to be Fiery Hope, and Evelyn McDougall is going to have a group. So that's a benefit for Stone Soup. And I think that's all.
What kind of treats do you have over there?
We have just cornbread and coffee and tea.